Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly with all things Brooklyn. With Talking Nets podcast and WFAN host Keith McPherson. We got my man on the line. Hey, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us. I apologize that the first time I have you on is after an ugly loss like that to the Pelicans, but we got to do what we got to do, man. We got to do what we got to do, all right?
This is New York, of course. Perfect time to talk Nets.
All right, let's talk last night's game. They only put up 34 points going into halftime, and they really couldn't get anything going. Head coach Jacques Vaughn questioned his team's grit and their toughness after the game when he talked about they're not there yet in terms of diving for loose balls and being desperate about winning. As a player, that would hurt me inside if my coach questioned my grit. So thoughts on the game and thoughts on coach's comments?
I mean, the game was over in the first quarter. It was 16-3, then it was 30-16, and clearly you could see they were overmatched. Clearly you could see the Pelicans' size, the Pelicans' chemistry, just the Pelicans' athletes, players on their team, better than what the Nets have. They had nothing for them. And they're in a rough stretch right now. A lot of people are talking about them losing, I guess, 9 out of their last 11, if that's the number now. It doesn't even matter. None of that matters, right? What matters is there's no pride. And that's when you get to Jacques Vaughn talking about diving for balls and saying we're not there yet. And it's eerily similar to when Steve Nash was with the Nets. I did a podcast for Talking Nets yesterday, and I said, New Year, same Nets. Because I remember a time when Steve Nash got fired and Steve Nash was let go where there was a disconnect, and he spoke on the guys not responding to me, right? My voice not registering with the players. And that disconnect between the head coach and the players has become evident with the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, they lack the talent. That's when you want to talk about Sean Marks, the GM. But right now, the message that Jacques Vaughn is sending to his team is not connecting.
So this one's a little off topic because you kind of threw me off guard when you say there's no pride there. If you've got two coaches, back-to-back head coaches saying that there's a disconnect and you can't get your guys going, is that seem to be the culture for Brooklyn basketball right now?
No, that wasn't the culture, right? There was a lot of pride in Brooklyn, literally putting a team in Brooklyn, taking the team from New Jersey, stripping them of the New Jersey name, making them the Brooklyn Nets. When we came on, we said Brooklyn, like that whole chant. There was pride just in the county and in the area for the team. But no matter who's on the team, it seems like they find their way to be dysfunctional. That's why I titled yesterday's episode, New Year, Same Nets. It doesn't matter if you went the superstar route and had Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Doesn't matter right now if you have a young budding star in Cam Thomas or veterans like Spencer Dinwiddie, Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith. They just seem to find a way to be dysfunctional, and that can't be the culture, right? That means there's an issue. The phrase I've been using is the fish rots from the head down, from the owner to the GM to the head coach. They put themselves in this mess. They'll have to figure this mess out as well.
All right, let's go in even deeper on that trio of dysfunctional players. Cam Thomas, Royce O'Neal, and Spencer Dinwiddie, as you mentioned, had no points in 68 minutes combined. That cannot happen in professional basketball, but it did. Why were they a non-factor?
I mean, we'll start off with good defense by the Pelicans. You can't look at that New Orleans team who has been a playoff team. I remember going to opening night last year. They came to Brooklyn and smacked us. They're a good team. Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, C.J. McCollum make up their big three. But then you also have so many role players. Alvarado and Dyson Daniels got a lot of run yesterday. Herb Jones and Larry Nance Jr. I'm probably forgetting a couple guys, but let's just give credit to the Pelicans. They had no shot of going to New Orleans and beating that team. But like when you say they were, they played 68 minutes and they were over, it's a make or miss league in the NBA, right? You got to make your shots. You got to hit shots. And they were strapped up. There was a ton of conversation about Cam Thomas and how he should be starting and how he's the best player, the best young player, the best scorer, rather, on this Brooklyn Nets team. He comes in, turns the ball over. They were lethargic. They were out of it right away. They can't shake the losing bug. The only team they've been able to beat is the worst team of all time, the Detroit Pistons. They got 2 games off of them, but other than that, they've been losing every other game.
You talk about that Pelicans team. Not one player scored over 16 points, but they did have 9 blocks, 10 steals, as opposed to the Nets, 4 blocks, 7 assists. So, yeah, they got it done on the defensive end. Now let's woosah. Let's regroup because today's a new day. They're down in H-Town, Texas tonight. They got the Rockets. It's got to be a bounce-back game for not only the squad, but for that trio that we talked about. So break it down for us. What does Brooklyn have to do tonight to come out with the W?
It's the second half of a back-to-back, and all the conversation in Nets world is about last week when they had the second half of a back-to-back against the Bucks, and they completely punted that game. They conceded the loss. They basically ran their starters out there for 10, 15 minutes, and the first quarter was competitive. It was a one-point game in the first quarter, and then they decided to sit guys and give up that game and let the Long Island Nets finish it out. And so fans were upset about that performance at home during the holiday, feeling like you can't afford to let games go. Early on in the season, when the Nets started 13-9, there was hope and optimism because they lost close games. And it's like, man, if one or two of those games go our way, we're in better shape. Now nothing is going their way. So do I expect them on the second half of a back-to-back on the road tonight to come out there and beat the Houston Rockets, led by Ime Udoka, who's also in conversations in the Nets world? Because if you remember last year, when Ime Udoka had his troubles in Boston, the Nets were the front runner to bring him in. But when you put that with the Kyrie Irving saga and all the drama and negativity that was surrounding the Nets with that, they couldn't do both. Yep. They couldn't bring that in. That would have been a PR nightmare. So Ime Udoka is down there in Houston, and I don't know what the Nets' plan is as far as minutes or who they're going to play or if they're going to be diving for balls or having pride or whatever, but I don't expect them to win tonight on the road in Houston, second half of a back-to-back.
Real quick, 10 seconds. The over-under is set at 222 points. Would you take the over or the under?
The over. The Nets give up about 120 points to everyone they play. If they're able to score 100 points themselves, I would take the over in that game.
All right, the math is mathing on that one. Quickly tell the people where they can find you.
Hey, I'm Keith McPherson. I'm your nighttime host on WFAN, The Fan in New York. I also do the Talkin' Nets podcast. We've been doing this podcast since KD, Kyrie, and that whole clean sweep happened. It has been an interesting run the last 4 or 5 seasons. But what I say is, I'm a Nets fan. I was a New Jersey Nets fan. I'm a kid that grew up in Jersey. Nets fans are used to losing. They're used to the misery, the pain, the suffering. And, we can hope for, better days. But right now, man, they're kind of just stuck in the mud. So, yeah, you can find me on Talkin' Nets podcast, WFAN radio at night, and at Keith McPherson, wherever you follow people online.
Damn, I'm glad you ended that on a positive. I was feeling bad for you for a little bit there,
no,
man.
Don't. Don't. We're used to it, man.
It is
These
what
Nets
it
fans,
is.
We're used to it, man.
Right. Thanks for hopping on with us, man.